Is the end of the world near? 3 bone-chilling prophetic events have just occurred in Israel, leaving many to wonder if the apocalypse is upon us. With ancient prophecies and modern-day events colliding, what does this mean for the future of humanity? The truth will send shivers down your spine. The second coming. As we draw closer to the second coming of Christ, the prophets have warned that the earth will experience great turmoil, wickedness, war, and suffering. The prophet Daniel, in particular, spoke of a time of trouble such as the earth has never known before. These words may seem daunting, but they serve as a reminder to us that we are living in a world that is rapidly approaching the end of its celestial existence. The Lord has warned that in the last days, the love of men shall wax cold, and iniquity shall abound. There will be commotion and fear that will come upon all people. We can expect to see an increase in earthquakes, disease, famines, great storms, lightning, and thunder. Hailstorms will destroy the crops of the earth. Jesus himself told his disciples that war would fill the earth, and that nation would rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. The prophet Joseph Smith echoed this, stating that we should not be discouraged when we hear of perilous times, for they must shortly come. The sword, famine, and pestilence are approaching. Great destructions will come upon the face of this land, for we need not suppose that one jot or title of the prophecies of all the holy prophets shall fail, and there are many that remain to be fulfilled yet. It is not difficult to see the signs of the times all around us. Wickedness seems to be everywhere. Nations are constantly at war, and the world seems to be getting more dangerous with each passing day. Earthquakes and other calamities are occurring with increasing frequency, and many people now suffer from devastating storms, drought, hunger, and diseases. The calamities we see today are just a precursor to what will come in the days ahead. But there is hope. Even as we see the signs of the times around us, we know that the Lord is in charge. We can trust in Him and His plan for us. We can take comfort in the fact that He has warned us of what is to come, and that He will provide a way for us to endure it. As we strive to live our lives in accordance with His teachings, we can find peace and comfort, even in the midst of turmoil and suffering. For we know that He is the Prince of Peace, and that through Him we can overcome the world. As we anticipate the second coming of Christ, there are many events that will take place that will bring both joy and dread. The prophets have foretold of these events, and it is important that we understand them so that we can be prepared for what lies ahead. One of the most significant events that will bring joy to the world is the restoration of the gospel. The Lord promised that light shall break forth among them that sit in darkness, and it shall be the fullness of my gospel. Prophets of old, including the Apostle John, foretold of the restoration of the gospel, which was fulfilled when the angel Moroni and other heavenly visitors brought the gospel of Jesus Christ to Joseph Smith. The restoration of the gospel has brought hope and joy to millions of people throughout the world. While these events may be frightening, we can take comfort in the knowledge that God is in control and that He has a plan for the world. By staying faithful to Him, we can find peace and comfort during these trying times and look forward to the second coming of our Savior. Rebuilding of the Third Temple. Deep in the heart of Jerusalem lies the Temple Mount, a site that has been the center for controversy for centuries. For Jews, it is the holiest place on earth, where the ancient temples once stood and where they hope to rebuild the Third Temple. But the world is opposed to Israel's claims in Jerusalem, much less their contested ownership of the Temple Mount. The situation on the ground is no less complicated, with Jews banned from praying at the site and those who visit accosted by Muslims, such as the women in black, who maintain a constant vigil on Jewish presence at the site. To make matters worse, the Islamic authorities officially deny that a temple ever existed on the site. But recent developments have contributed to the temple movement's goals and the realization of the rebuilding of the temple in our lifetime. One of the main charges against the existence of a Jewish temple on the Temple Mount has been that there is no archaeological evidence to support it. But this argument has been debunked by recent findings that have been hidden deep in the British Mandatory Archives Department because they embarrassed Muslim officials. The discovery of a Jewish mikveh, a ritual pool used for purification beneath the floor of the Al-Aqsa Mosque, provides evidence that the ancient temple stood on the modern Temple Mount and was a place of Jewish presence. These findings have given hope to the Sanhedrin, a group of rabbis who have taken steps necessary for reinstating future temple service. One of the group's projects has been the planting of the biblical temple forest, which will serve the agricultural needs of the Third Temple. According to Rabbi Hillel Weiss, spokesman for the Sanhedrin, the temple provided a link between the land and the divine. The project is part of the group's efforts to prepare for the rebuilding of the temple. Another project of the Sanhedrin has been the restoration of the sacred red heifer to Israel. According to Jewish tradition, The ashes of the red heifer mixed with water are a necessary element for purifying Jews to enable them to do service in the temple. During the time of the first and second temples, only 9 red heifers were used in preparing the waters used to purify Jews. According to Rabbi Richman, a member of the Sanhedrin and head of the project, the 10th red heifer will be used by the Messiah. The project is the culmination of years of research at the Temple Institute that fuses ancient religious texts and modern science. The Sanhedrin and the Temple movement also hold reenactments of temple ceremonies for the training of those who are from the priestly class known as Kohanim. This training involves special schooling on the duties of the priests, the use of ritual vessels created for use in the Third Temple, and practice on a newly constructed altar of burnt offerings. This altar is unique because it was designed to be disassembled and quickly reassembled in its proper permanent location, because the people of Israel are required to build an altar exclusively on the site of the original altar on Mount Moriah, the Temple Mount. Despite the challenges and opposition faced by those who seek to rebuild the temple movement's goals are being realized through these recent developments. As the world watches and waits, the realization of the rebuilding of the temple in our life seems to be closer than ever before. For centuries, the Temple Mount in Jerusalem has been a place of great religious significance for Jews, Muslims, and Christians alike. For Jews, the Temple Mount is considered the holiest site in Judaism, as it is the location where both the first and second temple stood. The destruction of the Second Temple by the Romans in 70 AD was a seminal moment in Jewish history, and since then, Jews have longed for the rebuilding of the temple and the reestablishment of Jewish sovereignty over the Temple Mount. Despite this deep longing, the road to the rebuilding of the temple has been fraught with obstacles, both practical and political. The world is radically opposed to Israel's claims in Jerusalem, much less their contested ownership of the Temple Mount. While the temple movement continues to prepare for the rebuilding of the temple, most understand that some political action must take place to reverse the present situation of control of the mount by Muslims in order to allow for Jewish access. Those who understand Daniel's prophecy of the 70th week know that it is a future political leader, the Antichrist of Revelation 13, who will one day make a deceptive covenant with the Jewish leaders, leading to the rebuilding of the Third Temple. Battle of Gog and Magog. Armageddon! The name has inspired books, movies, and an almost endless amount of commentary. The very name conjures up pictures of vast armies, horrible suffering, and widespread devastation. It has created a host of speculations and much embellishment that is not scriptural. How much is known of this great event in the world's history? How much of what is heard can be believed? Have the prophets really spoken that much about it? What about modern prophets? Have they too spoken of it? Where does it get its name? It's not surprising, considering its great importance in the winding up scenes of the Earth's celestial existence, to find that the prophets, ancient and modern, have spoken at great lengths and in much detail about this final war that will usher in the millennium. Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Daniel, Zechariah, John, Joseph Smith, and others have all talked about the battle and the events associated with it. Let us now examine what the prophetic record reveals, leaving out all unsubstantiated speculation and discussion. The information in the scriptures was given by the prophets. The prophets speak for themselves. In the southern part of Galilee in present-day Israel, about 60 miles north of Jerusalem, is a broad and fertile plain. Today, it is one of the richest agricultural areas of the state of Israel and is often called Israel's breadbasket. It runs from the Bay of Haifa on the northern coast in a southeast direction to the River Jordan. 15 miles wide at its greatest breadth, the valley of Esdraelon, its Greek name is still used today, is flanked on the north by the Nazareth Ridge and on the south by Mount Carmel, Mount Gilboa, and the hills of Samaria. One of the most important highways of antiquity passed through the valley. The Via Maris, or Way of the Sea, ran up the coast from Egypt, turned inland just south of present-day Haifa and Mount Carmel, followed an important pass through the hills, and then dropped into the plain of Esdraelon. Because of the strategic importance of the pass, a fortified city lay at the entrance into the valley. The city was Megiddo, which name means in Hebrew the place of troops. Because it lay on the flank of a hill, it was also known as Har Megiddo, or the Mount of Megiddo. In the English versions of the New Testament, the name is rendered Armageddon. From the earliest days, the valley of Armageddon, or the plain of Esdraelon, has been the site of great battles. It has felt the tramp of Egyptian foot soldiers, heard the shouts of Assyrian battalions, witnessed the passing of Nebuchadnezzar's Babylonian troops, watched as Jewish guerrillas fought Roman legionnaires, heard the cries of crusaders and Muslims locked in battle, and has felt the crunch of Israeli troops maneuvering against Arab forces. Megiddo, the place of troops. One would be hard-pressed to find a more appropriate name for this tiny area of the world's geography. And one would be hard put to find a more appropriate name for the last great battle of the world before the Savior comes. It was John who named it when he said, "And he gathered them together into a place called in the Hebrew tongue Armageddon." From that statement, the name has come to be applied to the entire Great War, although the phrase Battle of Armageddon is not found in the Scriptures. The prophets of old have spoken of a great and terrible war that will come to pass in the last days, a war that will bring about the end of the world as we know it. Ezekiel and Jeremiah, two of these prophetic voices, have provided insight into the areas that will be involved and the target of the conflict. Ezekiel, in particular, speaks of a leader named Gog, who hails from the land of Magog and is the prince of Meshech and Tubal. These are symbolic names for the leader or leaders of a great evil power that will arise in the last days, seeking to overthrow and destroy the Lord's chosen seed. But the reach of this great evil power will not be limited to Magog, Meshech, and Tubal. Ezekiel also named Persia, Ethiopia, Libya, Gomer, and Togarmah as being in alliance with Gog, while Jeremiah spoke of all nations being joined in some way with this evil alliance. This means that modern nations cannot be easily identified as participating in this final conflict, for the alliances formed will be complex and far-reaching. Despite this lack of clarity, the strategic objective of this great and evil alliance is clear: the nation of Israel. Ezekiel describes the forces of this evil alliance as coming against Israel, and the other prophets concur that the target of the war will be the nation of Israel. As we look towards the future, we must keep our eyes open for signs of this great and terrible conflict, and pray for the strength to face whatever may come. That's all for today, mystery lovers. Hope you liked the video, and also don't forget to subscribe to our channel.